It was supposed to be a routine flight from Denver to Seattle. A clear afternoon, calm skies, and a cabin full of passengers settling into comfort. Among them sat 12-year-old Emma Hayes, clutching a small notebook filled with sketches of airplanes. Her father, a single parent and aircraft engineer, often told her stories about flight mechanics and navigation. She'd grown up fascinated by planes, every button, every lever. But what started as fascination that day would soon become survival. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Emma looked out the window, her eyes wide with wonder. "Dad would have loved this," she whispered to herself. The hum of the engines was steady, the sky a canvas of blue and white. The pilots' voices occasionally came through the intercom, calm, confident, professional. Everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. 45 minutes into the flight, turbulence hit. Not unusual, but strong enough to make drinks spill. The passengers laughed nervously, unaware that in the cockpit something was terribly wrong. Both pilots, Captain Reynolds and First Officer Marks, suddenly felt dizzy. The oxygen system had malfunctioned, slowly depleting their supply. Within seconds, they lost consciousness. The plane, still on autopilot, kept cruising silently through the sky. But autopilot couldn't last forever. A flight attendant, noticing the cockpit door unresponsive to knocks, grew pale. "They're not answering," she whispered. Fear spread quickly among the crew. Emma, sitting near the front, heard the panic. Her mind raced. She remembered her father's stories about emergency systems and communication radios. As the flight attendant tried to calm everyone, the plane dipped slightly, a signal that autopilot was disengaging. Screams erupted. Emma stood up. "Let me help," she shouted. The attendant blinked in disbelief. "Sweetheart, sit down." "I know how to talk to air traffic control," Emma insisted, clutching her father's old aviation manual she always carried. Desperation left no room for doubt. The attendant opened the cockpit door. Inside, both pilots were slumped over. The beeping alarms filled the cabin. Emma climbed into the captain's seat, her hands trembling but steady enough to grab the control yoke. "Okay," she whispered, "just like Dad taught me." She pressed the radio switch. "Mayday, Mayday. This is Flight 382. The pilots are unconscious. This is a passenger, 12 years old." Static crackled before a calm voice responded. "Flight 382. This is Seattle Control. Can you confirm your altitude?" Emma's eyes darted over the gauges. 32,000 feet. Autopilot disengaged. "Okay, Emma," the voice said gently. "We're going to guide you step by step. You can do this." Passengers in the cabin held their breath. Some prayed, others cried. But in the cockpit, Emma's world narrowed to the controls and the calm voice on the radio. "Ease back on the yoke. Maintain level flight," the controller instructed. She did, hands steady. The plane leveled out. "Good job, Emma," the voice said again. Her heart pounded, but her focus didn't break. "Now, we're going to guide you toward an emergency descent. You'll need to bring her down to 10,000 feet. She nodded, sweat forming on her forehead. "Roger that." Minute by minute, the plane descended smoothly. The clouds grew thicker, and the mountains below began to appear through the haze. "Doing great, Emma," came the voice from Seattle. "You're saving a lot of lives right now." She didn't think about that. She just followed the steps her father had once described. Left throttle, check, flaps down, steady descent. Her voice was calm, almost mechanical, but inside she was terrified. Back in the cabin, passengers began to cheer as the shaking stopped. "Someone's flying the plane," a man shouted. The flight attendants held hands, tears in their eyes. A little boy whispered, "Who's flying us?" And the attendant smiled weakly. "A very brave girl." At 10,000 feet, Emma stabilized the flight. "Seattle Control, altitude 10,000 confirmed," she said, voice steady. "Request landing instructions." "Copy that, Emma. We're clearing runway 21 for emergency landing. You're going to line up with the runway lights. We'll handle everything else." She squinted through the windshield as the coastline appeared. "I see it," she said softly. "I see the lights." The voice on the radio guided her, patient and calm. "Now pull back just a little. That's it. Throttle down slowly." The runway rushed closer. The wheels screeched as the plane touched down hard, bouncing once before settling. Passengers screamed, then gasped in relief as the aircraft slowed to a halt. Emma exhaled, tears streaming down her cheeks. We're down," she whispered into the radio. "Copy that, Flight 382. You did it, kid." Emergency vehicles surrounded the plane, but inside, the cabin erupted in applause. The passengers, hundreds of lives, were safe, all because a 12-year-old girl refused to freeze in fear. When the pilots were revived and taken to medical care, they were told what had happened. Captain Reynolds, still weak, reached for Emma's hand. "You saved us all," he said hoarsely. She shook her head. "No, sir. You taught me everything," from the seat of a passenger. He smiled, eyes misty. "Then you're a pilot now, Emma." News spread like wildfire. 12-year-old hero lands passenger plane, flashed across every screen in America, but Emma didn't care about the fame. When reporters asked how she stayed calm, she simply said, "My dad always said, when you're scared, focus on what you know, not what you fear." And that single line inspired millions. Weeks later, the airline invited her and her father to tour the flight simulator facility. Captain Reynolds met her there, fully recovered. "You've got a natural gift," he said, handing her a small box. Inside was a pair of silver pilot's wings, with her name engraved beneath, for courage, calm, and heart. Her father stood behind her, proud beyond words. "She's been practicing since she could talk," he said, smiling through tears. As Emma stood inside the cockpit simulator, her reflection shimmered in the glass. She reached for the controls again, steady, confident. "Ready for takeoff?" the instructor asked. Emma grinned. "Always." And somewhere above the clouds, a young girl's dream of flight had already taken off, powered not by engines, but by courage.